Hello, my name is Maryam Mustafa, and I'm an assistant professor with the Department of Computer Science at LUMS. My areas of research are in human computer interaction and information and communication technologies for development. And today I'll be discussing with you some of the fantastic work in this space happening at LUMS, much of which focuses on some key sustainable development goals. The Sustainable Development Goals are a collection of 17 global goals set by the United Nations General Assembly in 2015 and are designed to be a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. The SDGs are intended to be achieved by the year 2030. The projects I will be discussing today focus primarily on affordable access to the internet, digital literacy, economic and financial inclusion, and in general, reducing inequalities and moving us towards gender equality. I'll The first project that I'm going to be talking about today is by Dr. Ihsan Ayub Qazi, Dr. Zafar Ayub Qazi, and Dr. Aisha around rethinking web for affordability and inclusion. The main idea here is how can we make today's web more affordable for better inclusion? Today's web remains too expensive for many internet users, especially in developing regions. Unfortunately, the rising complexity of the web makes affordability an even bigger concern as it stands to limit users' access to internet services. Doctors Ihsan, Zafar, and Aisha propose a novel framework and fairness metric for rethinking web architecture for affordability and inclusion. Their framework provides systematic guidelines for adapting web complexity based on geographic variations in mobile broadband prices and income levels. Preliminary evaluation shows the resulting architecture can achieve a better balance between web quality and affordability while preserving user privacy. Another important project by Dr. Ihsan and Dr. Zafar revolves around mobile web browsing under memory pressure. The main idea here is how can we make low-cost smartphones, which are prevalent in developing countries, work well? Mobile devices have become a primary mode of internet access, yet differences in mobile hardware resources such as memory device, coupled with the rising complexity of web pages can lead to widely different quality of experience for users. In this work, they analyze how device memory usage affects web browsing performance. They quantify the memory footprint of popular web pages over different mobile devices, mobile browsers, and Android versions, analyze the induced memory distribution across different browsing components, and investigate how performance gets impacted under memory pressure and propose optimizations to reduce the memory footprint of web browsing. They show that these optimizations can actually improve performance and reduce chances of browser crashes in low memory scenarios. Another ongoing and highly relevant project by Dr. Ihsan Ayub Qazi, Dr. Agha Ali Raza, and Dr. Aisha Ali looks at fake audio detection in resource constrained settings using microfeatures. And the idea here is how can we reliably detect audio deepfakes using machine learning? Fake audio generation has undergone remarkable improvement with the advancement in deep neural network models. This has made it increasingly important to develop lightweight yet robust mechanisms for detecting fake audios, especially for resource-constrained settings, such as on-edge devices and embedded controllers, as well as with low-resource languages. In this paper, they analyzed two microfeatures, voice onset time, or VOT, and co-articulation to classify bona fide and synthesized audios. Using the ASV Spoof 2019 LA dataset, they find that on average, VOT is higher in synthesized speech compared to bona fide speech and exhibits higher variance for multiple occurrences of the same stop consonants. Further, they observed that vowels in CVC form in bona fide speech have greater F1, F2 movement compared to similarly constrained vowels in synthesized speech. They also analyze the predictive power of VOT and co-articulation for detecting bona fide and synthesized speech and achieve equal error rates of 25.2% using VOT, 39.3% using co-articulation, and 23.5% using a fusion of both models. This is the first study analyzing VOT and co-articulation as features for fake audio detection. And they suggest these microfeatures as standalone features for speaker-dependent forensics, voice biometrics, and for rapid pre-screening of suspicious audios, and as additional features in bigger feature sets for computationally intensive classifiers. Outside of access, physical access to devices, or the cost of these access, in developing countries like Pakistan, one significant challenge in access to the internet and most technologies is low literacy. The current literacy rate of Pakistan is 62.3% in 2021, which means that an estimated population of 60 billion is illiterate in the country. And this does not account for digital literacy or fluency in the English language. To address the challenges of low literate populations in access to digital platforms, Dr. Agha and his team have been working on providing information access and connectivity to people who belong to low socioeconomic circles and are low literate, non tech savvy using voice based service offered over simple smartphones. Dr. Agha's work has been funded by organizations including the UNICEF Innovations Fund, the NIH, Facebook Research, the Gates Foundation, Google, and the AG. His work, dubbed the Internet of the Orals, has resulted in numerous information services and social media platforms to the target demographics around the world. His initial work on the use of entertainment as an enabler of voice-based interfaces for the low literate resulted in the creation of Polly, a viral speech-based service that allowed rapid dissemination of instrumental and development-related information. The idea behind Polly was simple. You call using a feature phone for free, record a message, you can add filters to it, and then share it with friends. Polly allowed you to listen to useful messages about jobs, health, and agriculture. Polly has been utilized on multiple occasions to spread information about the availability of entry-level and low-skill jobs in Pakistan and India, about Ebola in West Africa, and about maternal health in Pakistan. For information spread, Agha's research transitioned to the creation of social media platforms for low literate users. The first such platform, Bang, can be thought of as a voice-based Reddit where users can post audio messages and listen to messages posted by others. Both Bang and Polly were later utilized in Super Abu, a maternal health hotline designed for expectant fathers. This UNICEF-funded project explored the interest of Pakistan's expectant fathers in receiving maternal health information to take better care of their wives. Ali's more recent work focuses on the use of such services to create sustainable ecosystems where low literate, low income users can perform crowd tasks over phone to earn money. This service was called Karamat, and it allowed users to attempt audio surveys, answer questions in local languages, and earn money. More recently and relevantly, the Bang platform has been utilized in 2020 to spread reliable information about COVID-19 to the target users. Much like the works of Dr. Agha and Isan, my own work also focuses on ICT4D with an emphasis on exploring technology design for marginalized and underserved populations aimed at reducing inequalities. Now, while digital technologies are increasingly being used in developing countries to enable economic growth, employment, and empowerment, there is growing agreement that the impact of these technologies in the global south is not gender neutral, but amplifies the existing gender inequalities within these countries. Typically, most technologies are designed for or with the average user in mind, who is often a white male in the global north, meaning he's literate, financially stable, not from a vulnerable or marginalized population. It is rarely a woman and almost never a woman in the global south. Before I discuss some of my projects, I think it's important to understand the Pakistani context. Pakistan is a country that places 151 out of 153 countries on the 2020 Gender Gap Index, which looks at women's access to healthcare, economic opportunities, and political participation. Only 6% of women in Pakistan have more than a secondary school education, and 78% have no education. 50% of women own mobile phones compared to 81% men, and 37% men are mobile internet users compared to 19% women. At the current rate of improvement, it will take 217 years to close the economic gender gap. My work and my projects look at different aspects of women's technological inclusion, including financial and economic inclusion. It looks at designing for contextualized privacy, maternal and child health, mental health, and access to digital spaces. Today, I'll only be talking about designing for contextualized privacy and financial and economic inclusion. Most, if not all, current smartphone technologies and interventions work from a very Western-centric framework of privacy. So the assumption is one phone, one person, and they can use a phone lock on that, and that is physically only theirs to access. However, this is not the model of phone usage for much of the Global South, and in particular for women in the Global South. We conducted a detailed qualitative study with men and women in Pakistan, and based on this data, we reveal the norms and beliefs that determine how privacy is performed, how these norms are circumnavigated, and propose new contextualized frameworks for privacy design in the Global South. Women in South Asian countries like Pakistan only have access to mobile phones and to the internet as shared or monitored resources, which means they have access to a male family member's phone for a short time during the day. Some of our work exploring low literate users' privacy perceptions, beliefs, and behaviors reveals the deeply gendered ways in which privacy is performed. We find that in our context, privacy is not established or maintained within an individualistic framework, but is understood as a collective, that is, preserving the family's honor, privacy, and dignity, and upholding social norms. As a consequence, users strongly link the concept of privacy with scandal, the idea that if you have done nothing wrong, you have nothing to hide. This is particularly true for female users who, even when they have their personal devices, share passwords with family members and actively work to give the impression of an open device in digital space that family is free to monitor and see. And so it's important to think about privacy design as allowing users to enact specific boundaries, but at the same time keeping these boundaries invisible and untraceable. That is, allowing women to be seen to be upholding social norms, but also allowing them affordances to circumvent these norms. Current technologies do not allow for this kind of invisible privacy. And so, for example, while WhatsApp allows you to delete messages, it also leaves behind a trace of that deletion. Now, the way privacy is conceived of and designed and performed in our context has a direct impact on how different applications in a Pakistani context are adopted or not by women, as we'll see in our next example. Over the last decade, a great deal of funding has focused on financial inclusion, and mobile banking has been hailed as a one stop solution to financial inclusion, particularly for women. The rationale here is simple. Having access to mobile wallets on your phone bypasses traditional constraints of mobility and documentation required to open bank account for women. And so providing women with the ability to access financial services using online banking through their phones seems on paper a viable solution. Access to financial services is a particularly challenging problem in Pakistan, which is one of 7 countries that, in economic terms, constitutes half of the unbanked population around the world, and less than 5% of women in Pakistan are included in the formal financial sector compared to South Asia's average of 37%. Closing this gap is vital as lack of access to financial services reduces women's ability to engage in productive economic activity and increases their likelihood of living in poverty. To explore the potential of mobile money for women in Pakistan, we decided to spend some time talking to women who might perhaps be at the tipping point of adopting mobile money technologies. Our data reveals that most of the women use 3 primary methods for saving: rotating and saving credit associations, ROSCAs, which are colloquially called committees in Pakistan. They use money guards and they put money into tangible goods. A ROSCA is a borrowing and lending circle of women who know each other well and meet once a month to pool together a set amount of money. One person gets the pot each month. Money guards are older women in the neighborhood who act as banks and hold on to money deposited by other women in the neighborhood. A vital element to all of these saving mechanisms is the potential for secrecy and allowing for hidden transactions. The women we spoke to use Roscas and money guards to save secretly without the knowledge of their husbands or their in laws. This allowed them more financial independence, autonomy, and control over their own assets. Blindly digitizing these women's financials without understanding the mechanisms they have created to circumnavigate their constraints and gain control of their own finances would actually strip them of their agency and disempower them. In this case, using a standard mobile wallet application to manage money would make visible and transparent financial transactions the women have painstakingly crafted mechanisms to hide, particularly given that most women in South Asia, unlike their Western counterparts, have access to a smartphone as a shared or monitored device. Most existing mobile wallet technologies have not been designed with a localized understanding of how women navigate their financial independence and do not leverage the existing complex mechanisms women have established to exert their agency and autonomy. None of the existing mobile wallet designs account for shared monitored phone access, instead operating on a standard single SIM, single user assumption. None currently designed for hidden savings or create mechanisms that allow women to gain more financial independence. The goal of my work is to question and consider how we design technologies, but also what we consider when designing for privacy, for health, and for digital financial services. I'd just like to highlight that most, if not all, of this work is very transdisciplinary in nature, and and I think at LUMS we're very well placed to be able to do this sort of interdisciplinary work to tackle some of the greatest challenges in Pakistan, including but not limited to healthcare, economic and financial inclusion, gender parity, and access to the internet and mobile devices.